is Encore.
Cool.
The stories behind the songs.
Thank you.
Here's iHeartRadio's Miles Galloway.
Well, never has my mum been more excited for a podcast episode or anything I've ever done. You see, my mum is a Mariah Carey superfan, not just before Christmas, all the time. She would play this song in the car every morning on the way to school without fail, to the point where I couldn't get out the car until I heard those lyrics, because I didn't know you, because I didn't know me. This one's for you, Mum. I'm Miles Galloway, and here's the story of Mariah Carey's We Belong Together. There was no artist bigger than Mariah Carey in the 1990s. She was the artist of the decade, according to Billboard, the World Music Awards Female Artist of the Millennium, and the owner of 15 number one singles in the 90s alone. And that doesn't even include arguably her biggest song ever. All I Want for Christmas and You didn't become a number one hit until 25 years after its release, and it's continued to top the Billboard Hot 100 every year since. On the surface, Mariah was on top of the world. However, it wasn't meant to last. As the new millennium struck, Mariah was going through some changes, both privately and professionally. After years of trying, she was finally exiting her tumultuous marriage to record executive Tommy Mottola. Despite filing for a separation in 1997, it wasn't until the end of 2000 that Mariah was granted her divorce. At the same time, she was leaving a bad situation with her label Columbia, where her husband was the chairman and CEO. Desperate to get out from under her soon-to-be ex-husband's grasp, Mariah went so far as to fly to Japan to meet the head of the Sony Corporation. Of course, it would require her to give them one more new album and 3 compilations, but she was finally free. And then just like that, Mariah signed a new record deal with Virgin. Get this, a 4-album contract worth $100 million. That's an unheard of amount for its time, even now. But despite being newly single and newly signed, Mariah wasn't in a good place. As she was gearing up for the release of Glitter, her feature film debut, Mariah reportedly suffered a physical and emotional breakdown. Citing exhaustion during a 2-week promotional blitz, she made a bizarre appearance on MTV's Total Request Live and began posting messages on her website that concerned fans. Mariah was then hospitalized in Westchester County, New York on July 26th for extreme exhaustion after she reportedly became so upset that she smashed some plates. Before entering the hospital, Mariah posted a message on her website stating, "What I'd like to do is just take a little break or at least get one night of sleep without someone popping up about a video. All I really want is just to be me, and that's what I should have done in the first place. I don't say this much, but guess what? I don't take care of myself." Eventually, she was moved to a facility in Connecticut and monitored by doctors for 1 month before being released. Glitter's theatrical release was delayed 3 weeks as a result, but it didn't really matter. Nothing could have saved the film from the savage critics, who called it heroically bad and infinitely mockable. In contrast to all those number one songs, Glitter became one of the decade's biggest box office flops, winning Mariah Worst Actress at the Golden Raspberry Awards, aka the Razzies. Perhaps the most damaging part of all this bad press for Mariah was that the film was marketed as a semi-autobiographical account of her life, the story of a young singer-songwriter rising up from nothing to become a big star.
Glitter is totally not my life story. My life story would make a very good movie, but it would actually have to be a mini-series with multiple volumes, and it would be really, really hard to make it happen without certain people flipping out and getting very disturbed.
The film's failure didn't help Glitter's soundtrack either, her first release for the new label Virgin. Glitter was neither a hit with fans or critics. One writer called it an utter meltdown, the pop equivalent of Chernobyl. The album was doomed from the start, as Mariah had originally planned to sample Yellow Magic Orchestra's Firecracker for lead single Loverboy. Before she could release the song, however, her now ex-husband Tommy Mottola stole the idea from her and used it for J-Lo's song I'm Real. Mottola managed to release Jennifer Lopez's song before Mariah could release hers, so she had to swap out the sample for Cameo's Candy. Years later, in her memoir, Mariah would claim that she believed her ex-husband Tommy Mottola had sabotaged the release of Glitter. And in an interview with Playboy in 2007, she brought up one key factor as to why Glitter struggled as both a film and an album. Glitter was such a bomb, but no one ever pointed out that it came out around September 11, 2001. I mean, yeah, she does have a point. One good thing did come from the Glitter promotional campaign. During an interview with German outlet TAF, Mariah was asked about her contemporaries. While she beamed about Beyoncé, the interviewer asked her about Jennifer Lopez, to which Mariah said, I don't know her. And that, folks, is how one of the internet's greatest memes was born. Unfortunately for Mariah, that moment wouldn't really be immortalized until years later, thanks to YouTube. But in hindsight, it was probably one of Mariah's only highlights of 2001. In the span of 1 year, Mariah Carey had gone from Artist of the Decade to bona fide commercial flop. And things weren't exactly about to get much better. Depending on how you look at it, Mariah's 2002 began either as a big blow to her ego or a pretty sizable financial windfall. Virgin had decided that after the glitter fiasco, it would walk away from the deal it had signed with Mariah after only 9 months. In return, Mariah would be paid $28 million to not release any more music for the label. Quite the parting gift, I think you'll agree. The $28 million was on top of the $21 million Mariah received when she signed, so let me do my math here. $49 million for the bloody Glitter soundtrack? The label's chief executive described the deal as the most prudent course of action for Virgin and EMI. Whatever you say. Speaking to the BBC, Mariah would describe the 9-month relationship with Virgin as just a complete and total stress fest. I made a total snap decision which was based on money, and I never make decisions based on money. I learned a big lesson from that. Meanwhile, rumors about Mariah's love life were filling the pages of the tabloids. In 2001, a 3-year relationship with Latin superstar Luis Miguel ended and paved the way for an on-off romance with Glitter co-star R&B singer Eric Benet, who was also dating future wife Halle Berry. But the most ink was spilled on a so-called romance with rapper Eminem. She said it never happened. Well, he said they dated for 6 months. And while there's no actual proof the two ever dated, a war of words would ensue over the years that resulted in some of the great diss tracks by both artists. I gotta say that Mariah won this war because Obsessed is a total bop. It didn't take long for Mariah to find a new record label, though. She signed a new deal with Island Def Jam to distribute her own imprint, Monarchy. According to reports, the deal was for 3 albums at about $7 to $8 million each. Man, she really knew how to negotiate. Mariah's official follow-up to Glitter came out in December 2002. Charm Bracelet was her opportunity to make a fresh start, a new lease on life, she called it. In an interview with Much Music's Rick Campanelli, she explained the importance of Charm Bracelet.
And this album is definitely, to me, it's not that it's Butterfly Part 2, but it's another moment where I got to be completely and totally honest, it's a very honest, real record. I'm really, like telling my story. So it means a lot to me.
Unfortunately, Charm Bracelet didn't exactly get things back on track for Mariah. While the album was one of her highest debuts on the Billboard Albums chart, sales dropped off quickly and reviews were, cruel, with many critics attacking her for losing those magical pipes. One critic called it the worst of her career, while another flat out admitted, Mariah's voice is shot. Ouch. Years later, Mariah would tell MTV that during the Charm Bracelet era, she really started second-guessing herself, saying, I realized, all right, I have to go with my gut, because everybody's got an opinion, and so many people's opinions about me are like polar opposites. They're like, we love it when she does ballads. Make her do ballads. Then they're like, we want to hear her do a hip-hop record. Why is she dressing like this? She should show less skin. She should show more. You know what I mean? I'm like, stay in your lane, and I'll figure it out. In addition to the less than favorable reviews and the disappointing sales figures, Mariah's tour saw her playing theaters instead of arenas in North America. In the music biz, they spin that as an intimate show for real fans. But once again, Mariah found her career in a rut. Following the underwhelming release of Charm Bracelet, Mariah managed to stay relevant by singing on I Know What You Want, a song by Busta Rhymes and Flip Mode Squad that reached number 3. Then at the beginning of 2004, famed music exec L.A. Reid left his job at Artista to become the new chairman and CEO of the Island Def Jam Music Group. This would prove to be a pivotal moment for both Reid and Mariah, who was in need of some career rehabilitation. Reid had just orchestrated a career makeover for Usher, who was riding atop the Billboard Hot 100 with his hit Yeah. But you already knew that because you've listened to episode 17 of Encore with Miles Calloway. With that song, Usher had become the biggest artist on the planet, and Reid was looking to do the same for Mariah. The first step was to set her up with the right producer. Enter Jermaine Dupri, Usher's longtime mentor who co-wrote and produced Mariah's 1996 number 1 hit, Always Be My Baby. Do-do-do, Well, Mariah flew down to Atlanta, and the two got to work at Southside, Dupri's 10,000 square foot recording studio, and it didn't take long for the chemistry to spark. In no time, the two had new songs in the bank. More collaborations followed, and Mariah was hooking up with the Neptunes, Kanye West, Snoop Dogg, Nelly, and Twista, the fastest rapper in the world. Sorry, Twista. In November 2004, Mariah presented an album's worth of songs to L.A. Reid. At first, Mariah was planning the first single to be Say Something, the song she wrote and recorded with the Neptunes featuring Snoop Dogg. Then it was Shake It Off, her favorite song on the album. Reid felt she needed a few more bangers. Sound familiar? He said the same thing to Usher when he was working on Confessions. Must be a thing with him. Anyway, Mariah went back to Atlanta to work with Jermaine Dupri again, and guess what? They created some magic. In just 2 days, they came up with the songs It's Like That and We Belong Together.
But when I work with like Jermaine Dupri, who's one of my favorite people in the world, he's a great friend and he's a great collaborator. Sometimes we'll just come up with a concept like, okay, we want to write a ballad. We want to make it, this type of feeling, whether it's like We Belong Together was a specific direction that we sort of had when we went into the studio. And I think we both knew where we were going. And it's just a process of feeling it out. Like, I'll start to sing a melody. He'll sing a melody in his own way, his own unique way. And I'll kind of turn that into my interpretation of that. And
with that in place, Mariah was ready to emancipate Mimi. The album is not about making the older executives happy by making a bring down the house tearjerker ballad or something steeped in the media dramas of my life. What I tried to do was keep the sessions very sparse, unproduced, like in 70s soul music. That was Mariah Carey explaining to MTV what she wanted from her 10th studio album, The Emancipation of Mimi. Out of the spotlight for almost 2 years, Mariah made what many considered to be a career-saving comeback. Some had written her off after the glitter fiasco and Charm Bracelet's lackluster reception, but The Emancipation of Mimi was a statement to the world. Mariah was liberated from her controllers and back at the top of her game. Mariah would tell Genius,
so glitter was like, people looked at it like, oh, that's her downfall, that's it. So then I signed with Universal, and we did the Charm Bracelet album, but I think had they released different songs from that album, it would have done better. But, everybody was like, oh, let's have a sob story. Let's release Through the Rain. I wrote it. I'm not hating on my own song. A little bit, maybe, but I'm not. I don't mean to. And I do love Lullaby. But with that album, it was like there was something to prove. And then we didn't really prove it because it wasn't a big hit. Then when I was working on The Emancipation of Mimi, it was much more like, let me just really, really go deep and just try my best. And then when L.A. Reid came to the label, he was like, did you work with Jermaine yet? I'm like, we haven't gotten back together and worked together. And then we got together and, because we had written Always Be My Baby.
Of course.
That was, yeah.
Shout out to Jermaine.
Yeah, on the
You guys
Daydream
have a
album.
special chemistry.
We really do. I love JD. He's like one of my favorite people. Jermash. And then The Emancipation of Mimi became this record that I still love so much to this day.
The album presented the most intimate side of her yet, which is why she chose to use her nickname Mimi, which was only ever used by those closest to her. On her website, she posted a statement explaining why Mimi was so important to her and the album. It's just one of those little things that I've kept for myself in an attempt to have some delineation between a public persona and a private life. I'm letting my guard down and inviting my fans to be that much closer to me. More importantly, I'm celebrating the fact that I've grown into a person and artist who no longer feels imprisoned by my insecurities or compelled to try and live up to someone else's vision of Mariah Carey. I now feel I can honestly say, this is me. The real me. Take it or leave it. The first single, It's Like That, revealed a fun, don't care side to Mariah that she'd likely been waiting years to express. A club-ready hip-hop record featuring Jermaine Dupri and Fat Man Scoop, the song felt like a perfect intro to Mariah 2.0, or Mimi, if you will. As fun as It's Like That was, it didn't get Mariah her next number one. That would come with her next song.
Well, a lot of people have been asking me about We Belong Together, and obviously it's a great moment for me because the song became my 16th number one single, and it really was pretty fast how it happened, and it was the last song I wrote for this album, The Emancipation of Mimi, so it was just like, everything was such a blessing the way it happened with that song. So I think people are feeling the emotion that went into it, and part of what what became, I think, the magic to that record was the fact that I recorded the vocal in pretty much one take, because L.A. Reid was coming into the studio, and I knew he was like walking downstairs. I didn't have any time to finish what I was doing, and I wanted to play the song for him, and so I kind of just sang it, and my first take became the final take. So for me, that's a big deal, because I usually go back and forth, and I'm like, oh, that's not good enough, I got to make it better. But I think the emotion, the raw emotion, was captured on that record because of the fact of that pressure. But I think it's a song that people can relate to, because most people have been in that situation where they feel like they're in love, and maybe it doesn't work out for whatever reason, and maybe they want to get back together with that person, and it's like their ideal situation of what they want, in terms of love.
It's fair to say that without We Belong Together, Mariah Carey's comeback may never have happened with the emancipation of Mimi. With this one song, Mariah changed the trajectory of her career. She wrote the song with Jermaine Dupri and Johanna Austin, coming up with the initial bones of the song in only 8 hours. And yet there are 9 songwriters listed for We Belong Together, because like many songs these days, it takes inspiration from others. Specifically, it interpolates and even references a couple of 80s retro soul classics. Bobby Womack's If You Think You're Lonely Now, and 2 Occasions by The Deal, a band from Cincinnati that featured not only Babyface, but also Mariah's label boss, L.A. Reid. Using these songs was key to making the song click. According to Johanna Austin, Jermaine Dupri had an issue with the second verse. He told Vogue, Jermaine came to me and he said, I need you to come up with one of those verses that I know you could do. I threw the Bobby Womack line out there and it was received pretty well. Released on March 15th, 2005, We Belong Together held strong throughout the year, spending 14 total weeks at number 1 on the US Billboard Hot 100, while topping Billboard's year-end chart. To many, it also earned Song of the Summer honors, with Khalifa Sano of the New York Times writing a column on the song's seasonal dominance. For many of us, We Belong Together has already come to seem inseparable from the season it's dominated. The Gone Too Soon lyrics match not only the season's good times, but its broken promises as well. Turn it up and you can remember all the fun you almost had. Critics across the board praised the R&B ballad in which Mariah makes an emotional appeal for her ex to come back to her as a career-redefining moment, calling it innovative and singling out her ability to spit phrases like rappers. How could we talk about We Belong Together's legacy without mentioning the music video? It's actually the second part in a 2-part narrative directed by Brett Ratner that begins with It's Like That. In that video, Mariah attends a swanky party hosted by her groom-to-be, played by Eric Roberts. You know, that guy. There's poker, there's dancing, and there's... Wait, who is that in a mask that pauses Mariah in her tracks? Why, it's her ex, played by Wentworth Miller. A big to-be-continued flashes on the screen, which brings us to We Belong Together. In part 2, it's Mariah's wedding day, but she doesn't exactly seem excited. It shows her getting ready, walking down the aisle, and then, like a bat out of hell, she's gone. Yep, good old Wentworth Miller shows up and steals her away from the bad guy, Eric Roberts, who no doubt is playing Tommy Mottola here. And about that wedding dress in the video.
The wedding dress was a Vera Wang original dress from a while ago that I actually wore on a certain occasion and had it in storage. And when we came up with the concept for the video to have the element of a wedding in it, I said, well, I do have my old wedding dress. It's still weird to me because I can't believe I was ever married, but whatever, that's another story. And I knew that we wouldn't be able to get a fabulous dress like in 2 days, so I just took that dress out of storage, and it has a 27-foot train, and it was just all hand beaded and stuff, so I figured might as well get some use out of it, and so it's my dress.
Ooh, take that, Tommy Mottola. Also, I've got to point out, that 27-foot train dragging along the ground as they drive off in that convertible. Yeah, that dress is forever ruined. Actually, the original plan was for Mariah to burn the dress at the end of the video, but as she told Andy Cohen on Watch What Happens Live, I didn't want to make a rash decision. It's better that we saved it. Something tells me that dress has never seen the light of day again. For Mariah, the success of We Belong Together was as sweet as any of her previous 15 number 1 hits. Maybe even the sweetest.
Well, I think that at this point in my life, having this success with this 16th number 1 with We Belong Together is even more special, because after being kind of like out of the limelight for a minute and coming back, and then having it be a song that means so much to me and having it really connect with the public, not only my fans who obviously mean everything to me and have stuck by me through everything. But people who may not have known my music in the past and stuff like that, it's a really great feeling, especially as a songwriter.
We Belong Together was nominated for just about every award you could think of. It took home Grammys for R&B song and female R&B vocal performance, but it was also nominated for Song of the Year and Record of the Year. It won Song of the Year at the ASCAP Awards, Hot 100 Song of the Year, plus 4 more at the Billboard Music Awards, and Choice Love Song at the Teen Choice Awards. Aw, how cute. Must have been the song of all proms that year. While it may not continue to be top of the charts every December like All I Want for Christmas Is You, We Belong Together is a stone-cold classic, all 12 months out of the year. I'm Miles Galloway, and that was the story of Mariah Carey's We Belong Together, with new episodes of Encore every Thursday.
Encore is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. Download the iHeartRadio app for more great podcasts just like these.